Catherine, we did the 7 Needs of Wellbeing Performance test workshop with some of your team. What was the outcome from that?
Well, we did it because we were closed for 15 months, so cinema was shut. And it's really hard to rebuild a team when you haven't all been in the room and you haven't had anything to do, quite a lot of you. So we did it when we'd been back 4 months or so. And it was amazing, actually. I think it's one of the best bits. It's not training, really, is it? Because we didn't position it as training. We did it as helping you be better at what you do. And so what I got fed back was everyone loved it because they could talk very openly. There was a shared knowledge and people learning things about each other. So we have a very quiet team member who talked about how she played musical instruments. No one knew that. And it was that thing about it was psychologically safe. So at no stage did anybody think, oh, I don't really want to put this out there, because there were no wrong answers. It was just about who you are. And the feedback was amazing. So I literally had people saying, I'm going to change stuff. I feel very different. It's made me realise how much I love my colleagues. 3 people cried because they realised how much they loved their colleagues. It was like, I know it's a really weird thing to say. It was very beautiful and very energising, and we learnt little things that we do every day now that make us better colleagues and makes us a better organisation.
Excellent. We'll come on and talk about a few of those things in a minute, but you know, it's lovely. One of the things for us that is great is we get feedback. I've run transformation programmes for 15 years. I've never had feedback like we get now, and I can't take credit for it because it's the people that work for us that do it. But it's brilliant, and as a CEO, it's lovely to have your team feel like that, isn't it? Yeah. Jazzy, from a psychological point of view, why is measurement important? What do we learn from that?
Measurement's really helpful because it helps us track progress. It helps us actually put something, especially with well-being, that tends to be quite subjective and qualitative. It makes it more quantitative so that we can measure it. And I think what's great about this is it's something that you can do on a personal level. So you can check in with yourself and see where you're fitting within your own work environment. But also as a business, you can track where your employees are and the different areas where potentially they're doing really well or areas where there's room for improvement. So I think it's really, really helpful.
Thank you for that. And you'll see as you do the scores, there's a number of key factors that we're measured on. Dr. Yvonne, my sister from another mister. We always say this every time we're on the stage together. Yeah, sorry, just got in there quickly. In fact, you're not called Thompson, so you're probably not really allowed to.
No, I am in fact an imposter. I apologise, I'll be leaving shortly.
Yvonne, you run Wintrade. You've done so many things. You've written books about leadership. You're, you speak a lot about diversity and inclusion, but just also about bringing communities together. And one of the things that we know in the 7 Needs is relationships. You talked about it. Relationships are really, really important. You run a whole community of people. How do what is it that's so important about relationships in the workplace, and what can we do to kind of really foster them?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's really about ensuring that people feel they belong. They belong to the community, they belong to the place they work, they're in the right place. Because until we get that feeling of belonging, no one's actually going to feel very comfortable about where they are, who they are sometimes, where they work, and that forms a whole round. That makes you rounded. If you can get those things in place, you're a happier person, you're a more productive person, and you're probably far more loyal to where you work and what you do. So I think it's as much about making sure that staff feel belong.
Yeah.
We have a thing which is you can teach people skills, but you can't teach people attitude and the way that they are with other people. And I think that we don't talk about cultural fit, we talk about cultural additions. So, you know, the fabulous Karen Blackett talks about having a fruit salad of talent. And all too often organisations go, we used to have an apple, so what we really need now is we really need another apple.
Yep.
Actually, maybe you don't need another apple, maybe you need a mango, or you need something different. And I think that, I don't know how we created it, it just happened because we recruited the right people who wanted to be there. And we have a thing when people turn up, which is we do, you know, the normal induction system, but we also say to people, tell us what you're like on a good day and what support you need, and tell us what you're like on a bad day and what support you need.
Yeah.
Because all too often we turn up at work and everyone tells you how to do your job and where the loos are and how the coffee machine works.
Yeah.
Da 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 da. No one ever you sit next to someone who probably hasn't interviewed you, who's a complete stranger. You turn up on the first day, they're feeling a bit grumpy and they're under time pressure. You turn up, sit next to them and go, hello, I'm so-and-so. And they go, yeah. You think, oh, you're a bit moody, aren't you? Right, I'm not going to talk to you. You're not very friendly. It might just be they're having a bad day. So what we do is we encourage people to talk openly about how they're feeling. And it is that thing about, if you're under pressure, just say you're under pressure. Or if you're saying, I really need to talk about this. I mean, you know me very well. I love freestyling about what's on my mind. There's other people, my co-author Sue Unwin, who just likes to burrow into the problem, and she's very different to me. What you've got to do is have that openness, which is you recognise people's behaviours, and there isn't a wrong and there isn't a right, and you can support people in different ways. And I think that whole thing about, we just want you to turn up and be you.
Yeah.
And not, because if we all stop pretending to be the thing that everyone thought they think that we ought to be at work, just imagine how much more energy we could put into getting really great work done.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yvonne, you know, you work a lot with entrepreneurs. You have done, you've been an entrepreneur for a lot of your career. You know, one of the big 7 needs is around kind of mental well-being, physical well-being, and we know from lots of studies, entrepreneurs, I'm sitting here trying to not think about myself, you know, mental health, mental well-being, looking after yourself is so important. Tell us the sort of things that, you know, you see that you help and support by being kind of part of that community, what the challenges are.
I think certainly over the past 2 years, the biggest challenge has been self-esteem, it's been loneliness, say one, there are many.
Yeah.
Loneliness, credibility, obviously with the drop of interaction.
think, especially as Yvonne was saying, you know, there's this adjustment to being back, and it's lovely, it's so lovely. But I think, you know, some people, especially young people, have started their careers virtually. So as you said, there's that natural anxiety, but then it's heightened because we've been used to being inside. We've been used to just sitting behind screens. There's various things you can do, kind of tools, especially kind of grounding techniques. So all about lowering your heart rate so that your brain realizes it's not in danger. Because essentially when we feel anxious, when we feel stressed, we're going into fight or flight. So it's really important for your brain to realize you're not in danger, so that adrenaline can start going down a bit. So one of my favorites is, it's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it's essentially going through your senses. So 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can smell, 2 things you can hear, and 1 thing you can taste. So it really goes through your senses, and especially the smell. That's what's going to help lower your heart rate and make you feel more calm. And the great thing about that is you can do it when no one knows. So, you know, if you're in a meeting, if you're feeling a bit anxious, you can kind of work through it. And then just basic kind of breathing techniques are really, really helpful as well.
Talk about the square one, because I really like that, particularly in
really
meetings
like
or just before I go on a stage.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's again, it's a breathing technique, and even if you look out the window, that's quite a nice way of doing it. Breathe into one side of the window, hold for one side, breathe out for one side, and hold. And if you do that 3 times, again, that's enough for your brain to just realize, okay, I'm not in danger. Adrenaline can start decreasing again, and hopefully that kind of state of calm will come back. And especially if it's a window, you can be quite mindful with it, especially if there's a nice view. So I know you like that one.
I do, I love that one. Thank you. Thanks, Jaz. Catherine, you know, we touched on this kind of thing about relationships before. We know that attracting and retaining talent is now probably more difficult than it's been for a long time in a way, particularly when trading is so difficult. And with young people as well, what do you do to kind of attract and retain talent?
Well, I think you've pointed out no one ever leaves. It's like Hotel California at Pearl and Dean. I mean, it's like you check out, but you never leave. We have people coming back. I mean, I've got one team member who works for us remotely, and she's been with us since 1955. That's 2 years after the company started. She's in her 80s now, and she won't leave. I think it's because she likes the Christmas party.
Yeah.
And it's Lydia Pahani. No one knows how old she is.
Brilliant.
I think it is the thing about, well, I work in cinema, so you get paid to go and watch films for a living. I mean, that's hardly a difficult sell, is it, frankly? I think it's about giving people the opportunity, which is, even though Pearl and Dean is quite small, what we say to people is we'll teach you other things. So you might not go up, but what you will do is you'll learn different things. We give people a lot of autonomy very early on, and we treat them like adults. And we don't have, you and I have talked about this, about the whole, how people judge performance. So sometimes it's output. So it's like, what we'd like to do is we'd like to do 10 sales calls a week or X number. We don't do that. We say we'd rather you made 4 really, really good meetings than have 8 really average ones just to hit some kind of nominal figure that someone's come up with in a KPI review. So I think we treat people as if they're adults. We encourage very open conversations. We give people's buddies across different you know, so if you're in sales, you'll have a buddy in operations and a buddy in finance who you can talk to. And I think it is that thing about, I know it's a dreadful thing to say, we haven't got a problem about attracting talent at the moment because we try and make it a really nice place to work.
Yeah.
And we live it. We don't just say, oh, you get pizza on a Friday. We say what happens is if you're a bit quiet at work and you want to go to the cinema, you know, crack on. Just tell us you're going. So 4 of my team are going to see Doctor Strange this afternoon because they've got the time to do it.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. And it's that thing about just treating them like adults and saying it's your business, fundamentally, and as long as you're hitting what you need to hit, fine.
Gosh. How many of you are allowed to go to the cinema during the week? Okay, excellent. I think they're all going to come and want to work for you, Catherine. No wonder they never leave. Yvonne, look, you know, creating diverse environments. We know people that have a sense of purpose at work, businesses that have this sort of sense of purpose. We know it's the seventh basic need, it's massively important, but still creating that sense of purpose is difficult. Creating diverse groups and communities is really hard. What can companies do practically to be able to do that, but not only just to attract diverse talent, to make them feel part of it and to have a voice?
Fantastic, great question. So my belief, and of course this is my own belief, is that companies need to think about 3 or 4 things. I mean, we've all heard I hope we've all by now heard the quote about feeling comfortable or getting comfortable with uncomfortable questions, encouraging your staff, your employees to come and talk to you. If they are not happy, sit with them, let them have or get off their chest anything that's uncomfortable. You have to learn to have the difficult dialogue as well. And when we're talking about attracting diverse talent, I think we need to think about, it's great, everybody talks about diversity, but rarely do they deep dive into the intersectionality of race, the word that not many people, or people are, how uncomfortable are you feeling? I'm now talking about race. So again, it's one of those things you need to get comfortable with, feeling uncomfortable. One of the other things that I particularly want to encourage corporates or any companies to do is, I know most companies do CSR, but one of the things that I want you to think about is PSR. And PSR is personal social responsibility. So I'm not saying you should recruit diverse talent because they're CSR or PSR, but just think about it from a personal point of view when you are interviewing, when you are not only personal from the point of view of what's good for the company, but what might be good for that potential person that you're taking on. One of the other things you need to think about that I feel really adds to the bottom line is what I call culture add. So as far as diversity is concerned, think about the added culture, the added diversity, the added creativity, all the different diversity of thoughts, all the things you've heard about. I'm sure that you've heard about. You need to think about it when you are recruiting talent. So for me, all of those things add up to a really good platform way of recruiting talent.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And I love that idea of getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. Jaz, when we set up Let's Reset, one of the things that struck me is you're a psychological wellbeing practitioner. You now oversee a bunch of psychological wellbeing practitioners, PWPs, they're called in the NHS. What strikes me is in your day job, you can in 12 weeks help people deal with anxiety, depression, other types of what I would call mental challenges that are not acute mental illness. And so we use quite a lot of those within our workshops. It's really important. But can you just explain why that works? Talk about some of the things that are really helpful for you to take from the kind of work that you do in the NHS that we can take into businesses.
I think one thing that lots of people don't really realise is you don't have to be at complete breaking point to reach out for help. And you don't have to be suffering with a really complex long-term mental illness, again, to receive help. And, the NHS is brilliant. Obviously, I'm a bit biased, but it's great in giving that kind of low-intensity, quick support where you can get tangible tools to be able to help yourself. And as Mum was saying,
she's my daughter. Yes,
I can't say spooky, it really didn't sit well. As we're saying, it is about giving the kind of tangible tools. So it is something that you can put into business. And I think, one of the key things that are coming up with this conversation is it's about having the culture and the open communication within businesses that people feel comfortable to be able to reach out when they're having a bad day, when they're having a bad week, so that you can give them some tools, or point them in the direction to get some added support so that they don't burn out, so that they don't have to take long-term sick. It's about trying to help them when they're starting to see the warning signs, then getting to the breaking point. And that's the same with NHS support as well. You don't have to get to that complete breaking point. It could be that you've identified some warning signs as such and recognise that actually some support would be quite helpful. Yeah, does that answer?
Yeah, no, absolutely does. Now, I think the question, I was about to say, if you've got any questions, stick your hand up or put them on there, but I think that they might be, is there a question in front of you?
Yeah, there's a question. Not that I can read it because I haven't got my glasses.
Jaz, can you read it?
Yes, I can. What are the
glasses are
key
down there.
things that create a belonging culture?
Oh, lovely. Yeah, let's start with that. Catherine, why don't we do that? What are the key things?
Openness and knowing that you can be your true self at work and creating that culture. So asking questions. So belonging came out of
Yeah, I
the
was
book
going to
that I
say,
wrote with Sue called Belonging. And it is that thing about asking questions. Never be afraid, never stop asking questions. And also, if you see someone and you think, it's to your point, Jaz, which is sometimes you come and you think, it's just me, and actually isn't just you. And what you've got to do is say to people, you okay?
Yeah.
And then people go, yeah. You go, no. Are you okay? And knowing you have that safety and also the ability to turn around and say, I'm not happy or I'm tired, or because, everybody I've met in the last 2 weeks has told me how tired they are.
yeah, I know.
And I think it's psychological, to your point,
Yeah.
Yvonne. We've got to say to ourselves, it's not all right to be tired all the time. And being busy, we've got a real thing about being busy. I'm so busy. Don't be busy. Go to the cinema, for God's sake.
Yeah, and then be effective.
Yeah, and then be effective
Yeah,
afterwards.
absolutely.
I'll give you bloody cinema tickets if you're tired, right?
Yeah,
Just give yourself some time off.
Yes.
Because that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
And to know that it's okay to give yourself time off.
Yeah, actually, Jaz, that's a really good point. Psychologically, guilt, my favourite things, and touched on another favourite subject, like guilt. We get this a lot out of 7 Needs. People feel too guilty. What can they do? What's a thing that they can do to stop themselves feeling guilty?
I think guilt's a really hard one and it's quite complex, but it's about normalising that actually everyone feels guilty. And I think actually the what's happened with lockdown, because we have been in front of our computers and our productivity has shot up, but then our stress and our busyness shoots up. And then people are getting this anxiety from being in the office because they are having these coffee breaks and they are having these nice, important conversations with their colleagues, but then they feel guilty for doing so because they're not at their desk working. So I think it's about kind of challenging, and if we get technical, it's about kind of weighing up the evidence for and against that thought. So, for example, if it is, I'm guilty because I'm not working hard enough. The evidence for may be, okay, I have taken 4 coffee breaks today, but the evidence against is I've actually completed my to-do list, or tomorrow I know I've got this set in my diary. So you can create a more balanced thought saying, I don't have to feel guilty for having a break, or my mind needs a break today. So that's one way to kind of tackle that.
Yeah, brilliant. Yvonne, would you mind reading the next question, then answering it?
Yeah. Oh.
Thank you.
Okay, so how would leaders show vulnerability without showing weakness?
Oh, it's a brilliant question,
It
and
is.
you are perfect to answer that.
Okay, so I feel that all leaders should be concerned. Should be concerned about whether it's their workplace, their network, whoever their audience is. And I think you can show vulnerability by telling some of your own stories. I think, so for me, I often tell my stories just to show that I'm no different. In fact, to most of the people that I talk to on a regular basis, I started out more or less from the same place. I came from a different country, but more or less from the same level of work. And quite often, a lot of them are more educated than I am. Not experienced, but educated than I am. So for me, I have absolutely no problem in telling people in my generation, people of colour didn't go to university, so I didn't go to university. I do have 2 honorary doctorates and 4 fellowships, but I never went to university.
And you now look after the Queen.
Oh, yes, and I now look after the Queen. Shall I tell them how?
Just very, very quickly.
Very quickly.
1 minute, 45 seconds, and I've got one more question to ask.
Okay, so I have just been appointed a Deputy Lieutenant for Greater London, based in Lambeth. So that means we look after the royal family's public events.
Which I think is a fantastic thing to do. And I'm very proud of you. Catherine, very quickly, one thing that you've changed at the workplace because of the 7 needs of wellbeing and performance?
We've started putting on cultural things that aren't just cinema. So people said that, you know, they liked culture, but they had quite a lot of film. So now we go to the British Museum, and every 6 weeks, everyone gets a 1.5-hour lunch hour, and someone takes a topic. And so someone's taking people to an exhibition at the National Gallery in 2 weeks' time, just to go and look at one room of paintings.
Oh, I love that. That's brilliant. That's really fabulous. Jaz, one favourite thing that you think you can do, people can do for their well-being?
One favourite thing would be connect with people, talk to people, go on walks with people, use your lunch breaks. Please use your lunch breaks and coffee breaks. Just have that time away from the screen.
One very quick thing, Yvonne, and then I know you'd like to say something very specific.
Okay, one very quick thing. I think, much the same as Jaz, move away from your screens, get out and talk to people. Press the flesh, it makes such a difference touching people.
Brilliant. Okay, just before we finish the session, Yvonne, I'm just going to hand this over to you for a sec.
Okay, so very quickly, quite often when I do this kind of event, I usually encourage people to put their phones away. But what I want you to do this time is, can everybody take their phones out, please?
If you haven't done the
including you, young man.
This, do it.
Okay, and put your torch lights on. Wow, wow, wow. Point it at the stage, and we're just going, oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Are we getting a video from this side? Oh,
I'm going to do a video.
Oh, great. So I do this just as in recognition for all the people in Ukraine, because I want to make sure, even though we're now 6 or 8 weeks down the line, there's still a way to go, and this just shows that we're remembering them. So thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Brilliant start to today. Thank you very much to my panel. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Jaz, who is my daughter. I'm very impressed, and thank you for doing that today. And Yvonne.
Your sister from another mister.
My sister from another
And I'm just off to change my surname to Thompson.
Yeah, anyone who wants to do that. Brilliant. Thank you very much.